Hello and welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us as we explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. The 2025 elections and ongoing geopolitical events present a critical intersection that will likely reshape the financial landscape for Filipinos. Changes in policies on taxes, wages, and inflation, alongside evolving tensions in the West Philippine Sea, could have significant impacts on household budgets, employment prospects, and commodity prices. Today, we'll explore how these factors might influence personal finance strategies, investor confidence, and the cost of living for Filipinos in the months ahead. We are excited to welcome Professor Dindo Manhit, CEO and founder of Stratbase Group, to provide his expert insights on how political and global shifts will affect everyday financial decisions and economic stability. Professor Dindo, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Follow the Money.
Thank you, Raine, and thank you for, of course, the invitation to Bilyonaryo.
We appreciate you being here. Now, perhaps as a baseline, we have to be able to say that after the filing of certificates of candidacies, we can only know how some politicians might have the position on certain issues, and based on those issues, kind of try to see the effects of their positions on the economic conditions of Filipinos. Now, moving forward, how would you foresee the 2025 midterm elections as influencing economic policies that directly affect personal finance, such as taxes, wages, or inflation? Are there candidates that you see as likely pushing for reforms that can have immediate or long-term effects on household incomes?
You have to look at what a midterm election is, which is the 2025 elections, Raine. And midterm elections is normally a referendum of the policies, the direction that the country is in, based on the actions taken by the sitting administration. In this case, this is the Marcos Jr. administration. It's quite sad that the Marcos Jr. administration has been faced with economic policy challenges. I'm referring to the reality that the whole global economic system is affected by inflation. And in this case, in the Philippines, I even say that we are experiencing what I call a cost of living crisis, given that Filipinos are suffering so much in terms of cost of day-to-day expense. So how government addresses this and how the candidates of the president is perceived to be aligned with it will really affect the results of the 2025 election. It's good that there are a lot of interventions happening now with government, and maybe we need more continuity in this, especially in terms of tariff adjustments to import more rice or food commodities that's important to the Filipinos. Even maybe a revisiting of taxes, even on basic things in our country that might have some effect in terms of household expense should be considered as we enter the 2025 elections. Key to what we've been seeing in some of the surveys that we commission and we run is that very critical is how government, and if you would ask the Filipino voters, how would government address their basic concern, which is prices of basic commodities, jobs, and livelihood, which corresponds to their income. And they're not simply asking for higher wages or higher income, but actually the opportunity to work and earn a good living. That's why we track in Stratbase what we call underemployment. Because for Filipinos, underemployment is unemployment already for some, because they're not earning enough money. So it's a gut issue of survival, economic survival, which is defining what the public wants for our candidates for the 2025 election.
Which means that if you wanted to reach your voters, you'd have to reach them at the gut level. Is that correct? All your communications as a candidate would have to be tailor-fit towards their main concern, which is economic.
Yes. We've noticed that economics ranks high now. Normally, there would be corruption between economics, and there is still that governance question. that maybe there's a perception that given the hardship of our people, there are still some political leaders or elected officials who have not been made accountable for some of their actions. So that is the other issue affecting our election. But what is driving it really is how do they survive economically given these challenging times of high cost of living.
Understood. Well, you mentioned global conditions as well, and we're seeing geopolitical tensions, not just in the Middle East or in Europe, but also in Southeast Asia, particularly the West Philippine Sea. How might these affect the cost of living for Filipinos, especially in terms of food and fuel prices? Could disruptions in trade routes or diplomatic ties influence inflation or commodity prices?
That's how important the West Philippine Sea, because in the West Philippine Sea passes through more than 50% of supplies of crude oil or even LNG as it moves in the Indo-Pacific region from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific Ocean through the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea, and our eastern side, which is the Philippine Sea or Philippine Rice. No? But what's good is I see not as a threat given this geopolitical tensions, but an opportunity. Because what we're seeing today is a world being divided with countries that share values of rules-based order, or what some would say from a capitalist point of view, the liberal international economic order. So for me, I see an opportunity for the Philippines as countries diversify the risk from countries like China, Russia, Iran, that maybe we can, or even North Korea, those they call themselves Axis, those four countries that tend to associate themselves with each other. We can use it as an opportunity. How can we turn our strong position against our northern neighbor on national security and turn this into an economic security opportunity by getting ourselves stronger with like-minded countries, Japan, Korea for investment, Australia, New Zealand, or even Canada, the United States, or European Union nations. So we have to see this from a geostrategic opportunity point of view, not simply as a threat, but it's how we deal with this threat and turn this into an opportunity for investment. It can generate jobs in the coming years for the Philippine government and more specifically for the Filipino people.
Right, and just now we're showing some key insights from your most recent report. You're saying that 7 out of 10 Filipinos will not support political candidates with known leanings to China. Now, in light of, and of course you have the US and Japan remain the most trustworthy and beneficial partners as perceived by Filipinos for the Philippines. Now, in light of geopolitical shifts, especially where US-China relations are concerned, how might the next Philippine administration handle foreign exchange rates? Or what will that mean for OFW remittances?
I think, of course, for remittances, a strong dollar is always good for them because of the exchange rate. But I think more than that is really what's the use of a strong currency coming from outside if the cost of living is high? So we need to really manage the cost of basic goods in the country, but side by side also, let's look at opportunities for livelihood that can be created by stronger times with beneficial partners like the United States, Japan, EU nations. When you look at data, especially like Singapore is a strong investment source, you always have to remember that these are not really Singaporean companies. These are American or EU countries that has regional offices also in Southeast Asia, and they bring investment and jobs here. So it's really about creating an environment for investment-led growth, side by side with strong consumption-based economy. Imagine how our economy will be stronger. We grow our economy not only based on consumption, which is our traditional source, but even investment-led and job-generating growth.
Talking about investments and partnerships, how might future trade deals negotiated by post-2025 administration with ASEAN, the US, or other partners affect the average Filipino's access to affordable products and services? Some people are against more trade deals, competition. Some people are for it. What do you think?
I see two things in trade. It's an opportunity for us to get better goods. That means it might be more or less affordable for our people, but also could mean transfer of technology also. We can learn. But if you can balance these trade opportunities into investment opportunities. So we have to view all these trade agreements into opportunities to generate interest to enter our country, just like how our ASEAN neighbors have done. They have maximized what they can extract from foreign trade agreements, but they've also focused a lot in ensuring that the investment environment is conducive to foreign investment. And that's what we need to provide moving forward. We tend to be lacking in that opportunity. That's why we are left behind by some of our ASEAN neighbors, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand. So maybe we should learn from that. And how do we make ourselves win in Southeast Asia by capturing some of these investments and generating more in the last 3 years of this administration?
Talk about being left behind and transfer of technology. Is there a way that the 2025 elections could shape the future employment opportunities for Filipinos, especially both locally and abroad? Are there industries expected to benefit from the electoral outcome? How will that impact job creation or loss?
Not the election per se, but if the administration that is, I think, in the right path in opening up our economy, generating more investment by their engagement with countries that we consider like-minded, if they win strong in 2025, then they will have the political capital to push further a more friendly investment environment, which is part of the policy agenda of this administration. That means the president will have the support of both houses of Congress and also the support of local government units that at times are the challenge to investors in the country because they have their own political agenda. But if we see this opportunity that our government, at the level of the president, takes the lead, gets enough support in passing legislation that makes it more responsive to investment demands, and we have local government units aligned with the president, following the direction of the president and saying that we are really open for business, that we are an important area for investment in light manufacturing, in agro-industrial, in ICT, or even in renewable energy, then maybe that will generate jobs and that will benefit the whole nation as a whole.
These investments, Professor Dindo, have you noticed a seasonality to these investments? Do elections actually encourage investments or discourage it? When do investments pour into the country and when are they turned off?
Normally, when it's presidential, it becomes a wait and see. But since this is a midterm election, as I've said, a strong showing of the coalition of the president creates a political capital. So we can use this period of election before election season, even by February. Election campaign itself will just start in February. But if the president, through his legislative coalition, can pass strong economic reforms, investment reform initiatives, and use that as a springboard for their campaign in February and say that, look, we will continue by opening up the country more and generating jobs, then it will have a positive effect. But any environment of instability, too much political noise, mudslinging, at times tends to tell investors, okay, wait and see, let's see what comes out. But normally a strong performance in the midterm by a president will give him enough boost to have a strong next 3 years before we end a one-term presidency, which is a 6-year term for the Philippines.
We are halfway through the presidency of President Bongbong Marcos, which means by now we should have seen already some investments flow in, and we should have already seen it transform into personal financial stability or growth in the stock market, and perhaps even investor confidence. Do you see that as having happened already? And will this midterm election actually spur more, depending, of course, on the factors that you mentioned earlier? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
In our tracking, Raine, we're looking at data coming from Board of Investments. Their actual approval basically tells us there is a lot of interest. But at times, the approval from our Board of Investments up to the actual investment, there's a lag time, what, 2 years because of some local government challenges or permitting challenges. But it means there's commitment already. And I hear that it's a good number, especially the year 2024. And we can expect that more because there are actual some legislations that will boost more interest, especially the eco zones or so-called relocators in the eco zone, especially if we pass and sign into law the create more. It addresses some ambiguity from the previous create law that has caused confusion in terms of ease of paying taxes. And that is normally a concern of investors in the country. And thirdly, I know there's an initiative on capital market reform. Hopefully, Congress, it has been defined as priority, but I'm hoping that both houses of Congress really find time to pass it before the election season because that will unleash the stock market.
That's right. And we are expecting that, if I'm not mistaken, Senate President Escudero had already mentioned that that's due to be passed at the Senate level November 11 or before November 11. Meantime, how might the 2025 election campaigns influence the fiscal health of the government? We're looking at budget deficits or deficit spending. Are these factors that could affect Filipino taxpayers?
Not much. It's just that what's good with election uh, is that a lot of activities happen during election. We see some jobs being created related to election. That's why you've noticed some boost on the economy every time it's election season in our country because consumption also goes up. So that's what I expect more. That with consumption going up during that first 5 months of 2025, that would boost the economy and it will help maybe our fiscal situation. I'm still not as worried of our fiscal situation vis-a-vis debt, even given we are in a good position still. I think it's being managed well by the economic team as compared to other countries. We're heavier in debt.
Understood. Of course, we're down to our last two questions, but perhaps, of course, we can't forget the role of MSMEs in the whole of the economy. Is there a relationship that you see between the next administration's policies and the personal finance landscape for micro, small, and medium enterprises? Is there policies that you would like to see support MSMEs as a major part of the Filipino economy?
I think there are policies in place already. Of course, there will also be policies that we can desire more. But right now, when you look at the leadership of the Department of Trade and Industry, it's really the directions towards MSMEs. And I think if government can only work harder, stronger in a collaborative manner with associations like Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, that has a broad membership from MSMEs, then maybe as they collectively work together, how can we ensure that MSMEs continue to reinvest that can generate jobs? And that's the only time we can say that we are on the right path. It's not really about policies at this moment. It's about executing things that has really stopped, given current policy, or prevented MSMEs from reinvesting or growing their business. Given this big consumption, we have a strong consumption base, quite young, relatively young, so they will spend. But we need to give them livelihood, or we need them to have the opportunity to have jobs, and that's where MSMEs comes in. We need to help SMEs to hire these people, and they can only hire if they expand and invest more.
So implementation of those policies that are already in place. Finally, Professor Dindo, are there personal finance strategies that you would recommend for Filipinos preparing for possible economic shifts due to the 2025 midterm elections and the evolving global political climate?
I think at the end of the day, there will always be political economic risks. And in our case, there are geopolitical risks. But if our view should focus on how can we turn this risk into opportunities. That is critical. That means how do we see ourselves? Are we skilled enough? Have we invested well? Have we invested and divided our investment that can protect our personal finance? But at the core of that is how do we make ourselves really have a stronger livelihood, and that is skills, and what do you bring into the table? And you will be paid well more. So it's really about keep on building, keep on capacity building, keep on upskilling yourself. Then you can sustain yourself if you're an individual. If you're a business person, look at every risk as an opportunity to grow your business, to invest more, and manage those risks as you come down the line of challenges at the so-called at the market level.
Yin and yang, and hopefully we will have smooth elections come 2025.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Dindo Manhit. Always a pleasure to have you and sharing with us your key insights from your studies at the Stratbase Group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Professor Manhit emphasizes that Filipino households must prepare for economic volatility, adopting strategies to safeguard savings and investments amid political transitions and geopolitical uncertainties. And before we go, we leave you with this thought from former European Central Bank Chief Mario Draghi. The economy is a delicate machine. Shifts in politics and policy can be its harshest disruptors. And that is it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.